Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we begin, on behalf of ORIMS, I would like to acknowledge that the lands that we are on are the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. They are now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered under Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I note that we all work and live in different Indigenous communities and territories, but we are all interconnected through the lands we live on, the water we use, and the air we breathe. Considering this, ORIMS is committed to a journey of continuous learning through allyship. My name is Peggy Mendescuri, and I'm a claims manager at Claims Pro Operations. I have volunteered with ORIMS for approximately 3 years, and I'm honored to be the moderator today as we discuss the regulations and responsibilities of boiler and pressure vessels. We will review the safety systems, stakeholders, and the parts each group plays. I know there will be a lot of questions, so if you can post them in the chat, I will ensure our speakers answer those questions. At this time, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Michelle Williamson. Michelle, a former high school cheerleader and regional figure skating bronze medalist, brings over 20 years of experience in risk and insurance management within the broader public sector. As an experienced leader, Michelle is passionate about educating stakeholders and has spoken at prestigious events such as the RIMS Canada Conference and the Conference Board of Canada's ERM Conference, with certifications including certificates in risk management and RIMS Fellow from the Global Risk Management Institute. Michelle is dedicated to driving the value proposition of risk management. We'd like to also introduce Soren Colossi, mechanical engineer and authorized nuclear inspector supervisor, brings over 30 years of experience in the boilers, pressure vessels, and piping industry. With the last 24 years dedicated to TSSA, Soren prioritizes team, technical performance, and safety, beginning with his career with the Royal Insurance Company of Canada as a boiler and machinery inspector. Soren deeply understands the insurance landscape. He believes in the importance of three-way communication, a concept borrowed from the nuclear industry to ensure genuine understanding. We also have Lubisa Golagaza with 15 years of experience. He's dedicated to delivering exceptional customer service, specializes in regulatory compliance, and the BPV, that's a boiler and pressure vessels program. Known for meticulous client interactions, resolves issues and ensures satisfaction. Their commitment to fostering positive client relationships and in-depth knowledge of the BPV program make them an invaluable asset to the TSSA team. Thank you all so much for participating today. We genuinely appreciate it, and we welcome you all. Michelle, I'd like to call upon you to kick off this webinar.
Thank you, Peggy, and everyone, welcome. We're really excited to share with you today all things boiler and pressure vessel related. So I'm just going to share my screen. And Peggy, can you confirm that I'm sharing?
Yes, you are. Yep.
Wonderful. Great. So today we'd like to help you understand your role as a stakeholder in a broad safety system. And in doing that, we hope to reduce potential harm to Ontarians by ensuring that boilers and pressure vessels are inspected. So I implied that you have a role to play in a broad safety system, which begs the question, who are the other stakeholders in the safety system? So there is the Ontario government. They are the ones that create the safety legislation that we must all abide by. We have TSSA, which is a private, not-for-profit public safety regulator, which is an arm's length organization from the government. We have the insurers. I'm sure there's a couple in the room, and they offer equipment breakdown or boiler and machinery insurance. We have authorized inspection agencies who are also stakeholders in the safety system, and they inspect boilers and pressure vessels. We have certified boiler and pressure vessel inspectors who also inspect repairs, inspect alterations of these devices. And ultimately, we have the owners, the users, the operators of boilers and pressure vessels, and their property managers. We have insurance brokers that make sure that these owners, operators, and users have adequate protections in place to fund any potential liabilities. And of course, we have the claims adjusters, who are the ones that actually go and adjudicate those claims and help to determine root cause. So as a stakeholder, what do you really need to know? So this aims to provide you with some very, very basic foundational information on boiler and pressure vessel equipment, also called pressure boundary equipment. We want to share with you some key highlights from the Ontario Regulation 22001, which covers boilers and pressure vessels. We're going to walk you through what TSSA as the safety regulator does to ensure the safety of boilers and pressure vessels and the people that work with them or live near them. We're going to talk a bit about your role in the safety system, and then, of course, we'll open it up for Q&A. So let's talk about pressure boundary equipment. So a boiler, just to level set our understanding, is a fired vessel, means heating, in which gas or vapor may be generated, or gas or liquid may be put under pressure by heating it. So some examples could be a fire tube boiler, where hot flue gases flow inside tubes that are submerged in water within a shell. Conversely, you could have a water tube boiler where water is circulating through those tubes and hot flue gas surrounds them. So what's a pressure vessel? A pressure vessel is any enclosed, unfired vessel that contains gas, vapor, or liquid. And everything in that vessel itself is under pressure. If you think of a very, very small example, a fire extinguisher is a pressure vessel. Some other examples are autoclaves. These are the pieces of equipment in hospitals that sterilize surgical equipment, compressed air receivers, as well as heat exchangers. So I'm not sure how visible this slide is, but this is an example of typical occupancies or typical places or buildings where you're going to find a boiler or pressure vessel and its related piping systems. Places you can find them include bottling plants and canneries, dairy farms and funeral homes, greenhouses and hospitals, laundromats, manufacturing facilities, gas and oil refineries, restaurants, utilities, warehouses, schools, apartment buildings, the list goes on and on. So for the brokers in the room, consider how many of your clients operate one of these types of buildings. Do you know how many pieces of pressure boundary equipment they have? Do you know if it's licensed? Do you know if they're compliant with provincial laws? And the risk managers, do you know? When you're sourcing your property policies or your EBM policies, do you know how many boilers you've got in your facilities and if they're licensed and regularly inspected? So I'm now going to hand things over to my colleague Soren, and he's going to share with you some information about Ontario Regulation 22001, as well as the Canadian Standards Association Code B51. Soren, over to you.
Yes, hello everyone. Welcome on this meeting and this training initiative. I think this was long overdue. We had such a common interest in making sure things are safe in province of Ontario. And what you can see here on the picture here is an example of something not going as planned. So what you can see is a boiler coming out of a building, and it's a photo I took from National Board of Boilers and Pressure Vessels website. Again, it's reflecting of what can happen in case of inspections not being done on time, or people tampering with the equipment and not observing the safety rules. Michelle, please move forward. Yep, can you hear me? Yes. So what we're trying to emphasize here is to give you a little bit of information that you can use in further on in your endeavors, day in and out, to make sure that we're all on the same page. And this regulation, Regulation 22001, is our governing regulation, as Michelle stated, given to us by the government of Ontario, for us to ensure that is followed and things are being kept safe. So I put here together some excerpts that will give you the basic information of why it's important to conduct inspections. Why is important that nobody is operating any of these devices, being a boiler or a pressure vessels or piping, in case that is not being certified by the director. So by the director, we're talking about the TSSA director, who has the powers as given by this regulation, and together with the inspectors are providing this safe environment for everything that is operated in the province of Ontario from the perspective of boilers and pressure vessels. So as a result of each inspection, we need to have a certificate that is issued by TSSA, and that basically gives you an understanding that that equipment is safe to operate. So anytime when you enter a boiler room, you should be able to see a certificate from TSSA nearby that object that is located in that room. Therefore, we make sure that each inspection is being performed, and you have the proof of that inspection being performed. So in doing that, the director is employing the services of an insurer or of a boiler inspector by TSSA. So we are handing over the safety mandate to the safety people from the insurance to ensure that they are doing this type of inspections to emphasize the safety of everyone. So each owner or a boiler or pressure vessel has the necessary mandate to make sure the inspection is being performed, either, as I said, by the insurer or by the TSSA, unless the director requires that inspection to be conducted by the TSSA inspector. So following that inspection, a certificate would be issued by the director, which again, I just mentioned at the beginning, would reflect the safety of that equipment. That certificate should be coming within 30 days of the inspection being performed. Michelle? Now, other excerpts from the Ontario regulation, together with Canadian standard B51 that handles boilers, pressure vessels, and piping, are reflecting of specific requirements, again, in our efforts to keep everyone safe. So TSSA is actually coordinating this effort from the beginning of starting with the design of boilers and pressure vessels and piping, continuing with the fabrication of those items, and further on with the installation and completing it with inspection of those newly installed boilers or pressure vessels, continuing after that year after year with so-called jurisdictional inspections or periodic inspections. So all these paragraphs put on the screen here for you are there to reflect the controls there in place to ensure those requirements are being met. One important piece of equipment to every boiler or pressure vessel is the ultimate thing that will keep that device safe, and that is something we called a pressure relief device. That's, as I said, is the last resource in case that everything goes wrong. That specific item should still be protected, and if the pressure starts building in that item, that safety relief valve would be the one that will relieve the pressure to prevent an explosion of happening, as you can remember the first slide with that boiler coming out of the building. Therefore, we can say a teamwork between the owners, between the insurers, between the TSSA inspectors, together with the other stakeholders, brokers, and adjusters, to ensure all these requirements are being met. And we have to put some provisions in place to ensure that nobody would interfere with the safety of any equipment. Nobody will render inoperative a safety valve. Nobody will make alteration of the boiler and pressure vessel to prevent those equipment to operate safely. Michelle?
Thanks, Soren. So we're going to take you through TSSA's responsibilities as a safety regulator as a way to further expand on some of the points that we want to highlight in the Ontario Regulation 22001. So as Soren mentioned, TSSA regulates the entire life cycle of a boiler or pressure vessel. So right from when it is a concept, a blueprint, an idea, a drawing on a piece of paper or an AutoCAD, TSSA is involved to make sure that that drawing, that design of the boiler or pressure vessel meets all codes and standards. We also participate in the manufacture, the installation, operation, repair, and the decommissioning of those devices. So let's take a little bit of a deeper dive. So design. So as I mentioned, we have an entire staff of engineers who review those AutoCAD, those drawings of designs to make sure that boilers, pressure vessels, the related piping systems, as well as fittings, which are all those elbow joints and valves, that they meet safety codes and standards. And that could be the Canadian codes or it could be the US codes. We also participate in the review of manufacturing facilities. So the thing about a boiler or pressure vessels, it's kind of like a furnace or a widget where you have one design, but you produce many. It's a one-to-many relationship. And so once these designs are approved, manufacturers get to work on producing them en masse. And so we will actually go out to those manufacturers and do what's called a shop inspection. And that's to make sure that these are being built and designed as per the design. Make sure that they haven't made any modifications to it after it was approved. We also inspect boilers and pressure vessels upon first installation. So this is to make sure that existing equipment is reviewed before it's actually turned on. We want to make sure that it was built and installed to code. And this goes for used equipment as well. So an installation inspection is anytime that particular device is installed. So if you think of a manufacturing facility or a hospital or even a school, if you're taking one boiler offline to do some maintenance, before you turn it on, you need to have a new installation inspection because it came off of your system to provide heat or whatever it was doing for you, and it's now being brought online again. And so we do those very first initial installation inspections. So why do we do that? Why is it important? This is the Risk and Insurance Management Society. You are all risk managers. Many of you are certified in risk management and are likely very familiar with the risk management process, which is identify the risk, assess the risk that it poses, try and control the risk in some way, shape, or form, finance any residual risk, and then continuously monitor, improve, and communicate. And so that first, or that installation inspection, helps us to identify the risk. So what is it? Is it a boiler? Is it a pressure vessel? How big is it? What's inside of it? What's around it? Where is it? Is it next to a hospital or a senior's residence? How does it work? Is it using flue gases or is it generating steam? We also want to assess the risk. So when we go out, we take a look at that brand new boiler that's being installed for the first time before it's being turned on. Based on its design, based on history of accidents or claims, what's the likelihood that this is going to go bump in the night? How bad could it be? Are we going to have the boiler shooting through the side of the building, like the picture that Soren showed us? Or could it be even worse? And how long could that disruption or how long could that devastation last? So we use the risk management process to drive our internal processes to ensure that all of these devices are safe. So TSSA, along with its safety partners, which are the owners, the insurers, the installing contractors, we all work together to identify and assess risk. So as mentioned, we do a first inspection, and this could include verifying that the boiler or pressure vessel has an approved design. So every time an engineering design, a drawing for a new boiler or pressure vessel is approved by TSSA, we give it something called a CRN, which is a Canadian registration number. And that CRN must be stamped on a metal plate and placed on the boiler. If the boiler does not have a plate, and the plate doesn't reference the CRN, it's in non-compliance. You need to reach out to the manufacturer, get a new plate, and get the CRN stamped on it. During our first inspection, we also verify that that installation conforms with our code. So the B51 code that Soren referred to, or the American code, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, the Code of Construction, for pressure vessels. We also want to verify the overall integrity of the device and make sure that it's acceptable from an internal and external inspection. So key to note here, there's two different types of inspections when looking at a boiler. There's the internal inspection, which is actually going inside the device, which means you need to unplug it, turn it off, disconnect it from its related systems, and take a look at it. That requires shutdown of equipment. And so facilities really need to coordinate with their insurers or TSSA to ensure that they're doing it at a time when maybe your plant is shut down for perhaps summer or Christmas break, or that it's at a low productivity time for you. And then there's also the external inspection, which is taking a look at the outside of the device, taking a look at the gauges, the welds, the quick opening doors, the valves, and making sure that everything seems to be in proper order. You generally don't do internal inspections every single time because that is a huge disruption to business. So TSSA, as a regulator, we appreciate that, we recognize that, and we try and work with owners and users to make sure that we're doing it at a time convenient for you. We also verify during our first inspection that all the safety controls are in place. So if you've got a risk management plan, a business continuity plan, making sure that you have procedures in place around quick opening doors and safety valves. We also want to verify that any kind of pressure protective devices are there. So those are those relief valves, making sure they're there, that they're working properly. We also perform periodic inspections. So after a brand new device or a used device is installed and turned back on for the first time, we will then come out periodically to inspect those devices to make sure that they continue to be maintained in a safe manner, which is required by the regulation, and to make sure that everything is still compliant. So this really enables us to identify and assess the risk with those boilers, pressure vessels, fittings, and piping systems. It also allows us to track. It creates inventory in our system. And what I mean by that is the very first step in the risk management process is identify the risk. And insurers do this best. Every year you fill out insurance application forms, surveys. Those are ways to actually gather data about what's being insured, about what is the risk. And so our first inspection serves the same purpose. It allows us to gather information about a potential risk and then create data in our system. We call it inventory, we give it a number, and we can now track that piece of equipment through its lifetime. Also through that process, as Soren mentioned, is we issue a certificate of inspection. This is also a legal requirement stated in the regulation. You must have a certificate of inspection evidencing that the device was inspected and that it is safe to operate. Without it, owners, users, operators are not compliant with the law. So you've got a device, it has a nameplate on it. Stamped on that nameplate is the CRN number. You've had your first inspection, you've turned it on, and you're running your business. While you are operating this device, we need to go out and make sure that it's safe. And by we, I mean stakeholders in the safety system, not just TSSA. The majority of inspections of boilers and pressure vessels are actually done by insurance companies, not TSSA. And that too is in the regulation. So where a boiler or pressure vessel is covered by a policy of insurance, the insurance company is legally responsible to do those periodic inspections. It's only the first inspections and inspections of uninsured equipment that TSSA takes on. So you'll see that this is one area where TSSA as the safety regulator needs to work really collaboratively with the insurance companies to make sure that there are no gaps in our safety system. Other entities that can inspect boilers and pressure vessels, I mentioned, I think right on slide 2, was an authorized inspection agency. And these are third-party private companies that have certified boiler and pressure vessel inspectors on staff, and that they can go out and perform inspections. So there are 4 in Ontario, and they're listed there on the screen. So these are the organizations that can go out and do inspections on behalf of insurers. So if insurers don't have their own BPV inspectors, don't offer standalone equipment breakdown insurance, then they would contract with these organizations to make sure that boilers and pressure vessels are inspected as per the frequencies defined by our codes. Now, I'd mentioned earlier that you need to operate your device and ensure that it has a certificate of inspection. So in terms of what you need to do, so an owner, user, property manager, operator of a boiler and pressure vessel, they need to arrange to have it inspected. So if it's insured, they're going to reach out to their insurance company. If it's uninsured equipment, they need to reach out to TSSA. And so you need either the insurer or TSSA coming out on site to inspect your equipment. And there are defined frequencies in the code. Certain devices are inspected every year, like a high pressure boiler, and other devices every 3 years, like pressure vessels. So once you've had your inspection completed, your insurance company's got 30 days to submit that inspection report to the owner operator and TSSA, and that is outlined in the regulation. Actually, it's in our code adoption document. Once that inspection report is received, then TSSA validates all of the information. The owner also validates the information. They confirm that, yes, such and such insurance company came out on site. They inspected these pieces of equipment, all passed. They issued these recommendations. Yes, this record of inspection is accurate. So the insurers, your owners, your clients, your insureds are reviewing your records of inspection for accuracy. Once the owner and operator confirms to TSSA that, yes, this report is accurate, we will then issue that certificate of inspection. And we have 30 days in which to do that. Again, that's all listed in our code adoption document. And this can all actually be done online. So we don't need to be shuffling paper or sending emails back and forth or making phone calls. Everything has been web enabled in what we call our BPV COI portal. And so they can submit or upload the inspection report called an ROI. The owner can actually log into that portal, take a look at the records of inspection and approve them or reject them. They can then prepay for their certificates, and then they can actually download PDF copies of their certificates. So everything is a zero-touch process. So that's inspection. But your device is now 10 years old, let's say, and it needs some repair or alteration. TSSA and the insurers also inspect repairs and alterations made to pressurized equipment. And this is done before it's actually returned to service. Okay. The authorized inspection agencies can also perform these repair inspections, but authorized inspectors cannot perform inspections on behalf of TSSA. They can only perform on behalf of insurers. And much like everything in life, there is a termination or expiry date. Boilers and pressure vessels don't live forever. And so when equipment comes to its natural end of its shelf life, as we'll call it, or its life cycle, we also memorialize that in our database. So during that first inspection, we create inventory in our system. We then decommission that inventory. So we keep it for historical purposes, for data analysis. But we decommission it to know that that is no longer operating. If it is turned back on, if someone buys the used equipment and they think I can get a few more years out of this, that's when it needs another first inspection. So every time you physically turn it off and disconnect it from your systems and turn it back on, you must call TSSA for a first or installation inspection. And again, that's covered by the regulation. But if you are scrapping it and it's going to a metal yard, there is a form on our website called the Removal of a Boiler or Pressure Vessel from Operation or Use form. And that lets us know that we can decommission our inventory. So all of that information, what does this mean to you? What can you do? So as an owner, a user, or a property manager, you can provide information to TSSA about your pressure boundary equipment. And it's not just you can provide, thou shalt provide, as required by the regulation. You must let TSSA know when you have new equipment. These things can explode and can cause catastrophic impacts. And so it's very important that we know where these risks are. It's very important that you have all of your pressure boundary equipment inspected by TSSA during the installation or immediately after the installation of any equipment and before it gets turned on. Make sure that you continue to have that equipment periodically inspected as per the code. And make sure that you're obtaining a certificate of inspection for each and every boiler and pressure vessel that you're operating. And on our website, via our portal, please report the name of your insurance company so that we can work collaboratively with them to make sure that we're on the same page in terms of what equipment you have, what's been inspected, and what still needs to be inspected. And please note that we're asking for the name of the insurer. Oftentimes we find that owners of boilers and pressure vessels confuse it with the name of their insurance broker. So we really want to know who's underwriting the risk. For the insurers in the room, please continue to conduct your inspections as per the frequencies defined in the code adoption documents. Let us know if you have any overdue or backlogged inspections. We'll work with you. Make sure to complete and submit all records of inspection to our online BPV COI portal. And make sure that you advise us of any safety hazards, and you need TSSA to issue orders to compel one of your insureds and owner to comply with safety codes. It's important to note that insurance companies don't have the same powers as TSSA when it comes to enforcing the law. Insurance companies can make recommendations, they can encourage, but they can't mandate. And so we need to work collaboratively. The insurance companies need to let us know where they have concerns about one of their clients so that we can issue orders and compel them to comply and be safe. Insurance brokers. Consider perhaps as part of the annual renewal cycle, asking your clients for a list of all of their equipment. You simply ask for the UIDs, we call it unique identification number, that's that inventory, or ask for copies of the certificates of inspection. That's could be potentially maybe supporting material for an equipment breakdown application. It certainly demonstrates that the owner user's compliant, and maybe you might be viewed as a better risk. Consider if you've got a client with boilers and pressure vessels, whether they're more adequately covered by a standalone property policy with an EB endorsement or by a standalone equipment breakdown policy. Not all policies are the same, so it's really important to take a look at both formats to see what's going to best cover your clients. Source quotes from insurers that have certified inspectors on staff or have a contract with those authorized inspection agencies. This, while there's no guarantee, it does improve the likelihood that those periodic inspections will be conducted, which gives peace of mind for everyone and makes our owners compliant with the regulation. And then remind your clients to update TSSA on the name of their insurer, not the broker, but the actual company underwriting the risk. So if it's an MGA with certain writing authorities, making sure that TSSA's got the right company listed as insuring the equipment just helps our collaboration. Independent insurance adjusters, Penny, Claims Pro. Please, if you are investigating or adjudicating a claim where a boiler or pressure vessel is involved, please reach out to us. We would be happy to participate in root cause analysis and work with you, or simply use your data to help our analysis, which can influence codes and standards. So all of that said, please never hesitate to reach out to us. Insurers, if you are coming across devices that are failing their inspections, or you've got technical inquiries or a query about your very own audit, please reach out to us at the email listed. If anyone needs information on how many boilers there are in the province, how many orders were issued against devices, any kind of aggregate information, please feel free to reach out to our public information department. If you have questions about those records of inspection and the related certificate of inspection, not to be confused with certificate of insurance, please reach out to our technical team at bpvinquiries@tssa.org. If you are on site at your client, or you are the client and you happen to walk down to the boiler room and you notice there's a nameplate missing and there's no CRN stamped on the nameplate, please reach out to our engineering team and we can help find that CRN number and point you in the right direction. And of course, any questions on any topic that TSSA regulates, please feel free to reach out to us at customerservices@tssa.org. So that concludes the formal portion of our presentation. It is high level. It was not intended to make you all now certified in boilers and pressure vessels, but just to give you enough of a flavor and a taste of what's involved. So with that, I will turn it over to Peggy, our moderator, to moderate any questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Michelle, Surin. Really appreciate that. Lots of high-level information for sure. It's really, really interesting and significantly important what this agency does. And we do have a couple of questions. There's a question from Ishmael, and Ishmael wants to know, many facilities that he has inspected with small to medium-sized heating boilers. They don't have boiler man and water tests done just monthly by their chemical suppliers, and they don't test water daily, and neither other safety tests. Do you think this is acceptable?
So I'll try to answer this one, Michelle. Sure, okay. It all depends. Yeah. Fortunately or unfortunately, not everything is black and white. So in order to give a proper answer, we need to assess the situation. There are all sorts of types of boilers, different environments, different services. So in order to properly answer, we really need to look into the details, which are quite important. So until you have something specific, we will need to defer to more information. Okay, so it is possible to be acceptable. It is possible not to be acceptable, but it all depends on what exactly are we talking about.
Very good. Thank you so much, Surin. Appreciate that. We do have another question that's come in by an anonymous attendee. So if a specialist or an engineer conducting either a building appraisal or a routine inspection for insurance purposes comments on the age of the boiler and having reached otherwise nearing its life expectancy, is there a process thereafter, and who determines that the boiler needs to be shut down?
So again, it's important to look into the history of the boiler. So to say you take a boiler, for example, and you have all the history of that boiler. It was installed so many years ago, and it was inspected on a regular basis. There are repairs done on that specific boiler that were properly documented. Like you have all the pedigree of everything what was done with that boiler. At one point, it becomes a business decision if you would like to maintain that boiler, depending on the, as I said, amount of repairs that are being done. Because as Michelle was saying, all boilers, all pressure vessels had an expected life built in them, you know. So once you went over that, it's again, you can do whatever is necessary to maintain it in good, safe conditions, but it's important to figure out the financial part of it as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. I understand that there are just a couple of hands that have been raised with a question. Not sure who wants to go first, but you can certainly come off mic or come on camera and present your question. Go ahead, Pierre. I think you're on mute. There you are.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, I was typing my question, but I will ask it. How does the TSSA know that a new certifiable objects like BVPs have installed in the field and to go and perform a first inspection? The reason I am asking is because many times I have been at locations where boilers, pressure vessels, and more often than not in ice rinks where they have packaged refrigeration ammonia systems that have been installed 1 year, 2 years, 3 years ago. And they have like plate heat exchangers, receivers, ammonia, receivers. And the TSSA has never, ever been at those locations to perform our first inspections. And then I have to tell the owners, okay, there's nothing I can do here. I cannot issue an ROI. You cannot apply for a certificate unless you call the TSSA and have for them to come in and do our first inspection. So how does the TSSA know to go, or when new objects have been installed in the field, and to go and do the first inspection? Who is responsible for notifying the TSSA?
Yeah, and unfortunately, we are reliant upon the owners of the boilers and pressure vessels to notify us. Much like the Highway Traffic Act, and we have to stop, wait for 2 seconds before proceeding. We must stop at red lights. It's kind of an on your honor system. And so the regulation does require owners, operators, users of this equipment to notify us when they are installing brand new equipment or reinstalling existing equipment. Unfortunately, policing that is incredibly challenging. And so we're really reliant upon all of those stakeholders in the safety system, insurers, brokers, owners, to let us know so that we can go out and do those installation inspections.
What about the installers of that equipment? Are they responsible for notifying the TSSA as well? Or it's strictly on the owners to do so?
Soren, I'm going to defer that question to you, but I don't think TSSA has any jurisdiction over the installers other than the certification requirements to be qualified as a welder, brazier, or installer, correct?
Yes, unfortunately, the installation of any boilers or pressure vessel is not really regulated. The regulated part is the fabrication of those devices.
Okay.
And then once those devices are being installed, we attend the first inspection or the installation inspection. So at that time, we should be able to observe if the installation was properly done or not done. But definitely we rely on owners, we rely on installers to let us know.
And that's the inspectors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or the inspectors from the insurance companies stumbling over equipment that they know is not inspected. They know that they have no certificate of inspection. Therefore, by the regulation, they are being operated illegally.
Yeah. Okay.
Very important, very important question, Pierre. Thank you so much for bringing it forward. Really appreciate that. We do have some additional questions that are coming through. I just wanted to put them out there to our guest speakers. So if the insured missed an inspection or the certificate has expired, is that picked up by TSSA?
Yes, it is. We have a process that we refer to as the Lapsed Authorization Initiative, where licenses, certificates of inspection, etc., once they expire, if they are not renewed within 45 days, I think maybe Lubisha, you might be able to correct me on that date, then we will reach out to the owner and remind them that the certificate has expired, and we'll ask the question if they're still operating it, if perhaps they have in fact unplugged it and they're not using it and they're doing repairs or alterations to it and therefore don't need the certificate. Or if they've sold it, they've sold the business, they've sold the device. And so we will work with the customer to make sure that our records are correct and that we are getting them once again certified and compliant with regulations.
Very good. Thank you so much for that response. So we have another question that's coming in whereby someone is saying that they're missing records for 2 equipment at one of their facilities. Since it was handled by a maintenance manager who is now retired, they have lost the records and they believe the equipment is no longer in use and might have been removed from site. What do they do in this type of scenario?
So they can certainly reach out to our public information department and provide whatever information that they do have in terms of perhaps the site location, the address, who the owner was at the time. And we can certainly search our archives to find any identifying information on the equipment.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have another quick question here. How often do owners have to do the inspection on boilers and water heaters?
Soren, I'll turn that over to you about the CAD.
Yeah, it's all mentioned in the code adoption document.
Okay.
So for heating boilers, they are not steam. The inspection is every 2 years. For steam boilers is every year, and for pressure vessels is every 3 years.
Very good. Thank you so much. So can you describe more about the responsibility for the frequency of inspections? Is compliance on the frequency of the inspection driven by the insurers or the building owners?
So the frequency of inspection in terms of meeting jurisdictional requirements, so legal requirements, that's certainly driven by the code adoption document that TSSA issues, and which Soren just highlighted. Pressure vessels must be done every 3 years. But that is a minimum requirement. And so building managers, operations managers may elect to hold themselves to a higher level, and they may inspect more frequently.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I would like to note is that one of the great things about having an equipment breakdown policy is that the inspections by the insurance companies satisfies both that jurisdictional, that legal requirement, but it also satisfies the underwriting requirement as well. And so there is some benefit there.
Very good. I'm glad you added that information. That's certainly important to know. Is there are there recommendations if there are recommendations from the inspection, does TSSA ensure the recommendations are completed prior to issuing a certificate?
No, so the recommendations are just that, they're recommendations. They might not be non-compliances with the regulation or with legislation. And so we will go ahead and issue that certificate of inspection. It's only if there are non-compliances, which is where a recommendation, the insurer now needs to reach out to TSSA, and we have the powers of government to then issue what's called an order or an infraction against the owner of that device.
I see. All right. Thank you so much. There are two, I know there are two hands that are still pending with a question. If we can limit one each, that would be great. Go ahead. Ron, you have a question. Go ahead, Ron. All right. Cam, I'm not sure what's happened to Ron. Maybe we'll come back to him. Cam, you have a question. Why don't you go ahead with your question?
Oh, okay. Just to add on, like the pressure vessel, like as Soren mentioned, so deaerator is also a pressure vessel, but the inspection frequency is usually as per the CAD is 1 year. Am I correct? Or
That's correct.
yeah, same as a sterilizer.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Very
So
good.
I have a one question also, just add on for Michelle, right? Say the client has a boiler, they are not operating, right? But they are still not decommissioned or dismantled from the site. So sometimes I suggest like that, just advise me I'm doing the wrong thing or not. Just I say, unless and until your boiler is at your facilities and it's not disconnected, and they do not make the decision whether they will take it out or yeah, they're taking time. So you have to get the certificate. So this is the right process, I believe.
So if they are not using the boiler or the pressure vessel, that it's currently not connected to the system that it was powering, then they really do need to complete a permanent removal of boiler or pressure vessel from operation or use form. That tells us that they're not operating the device. And so we won't require them to get an inspection, and we won't issue them a certificate of inspection. Without that form, without telling us that they're not operating it, we are operating under the assumption that they're still using the device and that it poses a risk to public safety. And so we will require the inspection and issue the certificate. So they really do, the owners, users, operators really need to keep us up to date on when they're using these devices. And these are large, I mean, Cam, you know, these are large devices. They don't just plug them in and unplug them willy-nilly. You know, these are, if they're going to shut it down and disconnect it, these are planned shutdowns. You know, those project plans are built out weeks, months in advance. There's a defined timeline to them. So they know exactly when they're going to shut it down, when they're going to do repairs or major alterations. And so these things are planned ahead. And so there should be no reason why they can't inform us. Am I answering your question? hopefully the silence means.
I would suspect that you have answered his question. We have another question. Oh, Ron, did you want to pose your question?
Yeah, this is Ron. I have a question with the construction boom going on in Toronto, right? There are lots of buildings going up. They will have a lot of boilers and pressure vessels. And let me put it this way. In my past life as a boiler inspector, I've seen boilers and pressure vessels without the CRN number. Now, it's easy to go back and tell the contractor that you have to go back to the TSSA or to the OEM and submit the drawings and everything. Now, what is the temperature in the room, or the elephant in the room, so as to speak, that if we end up with pressure fittings and pressure vessels without a CRN number, is it the responsibility of the owner or the responsibility of the contractor? And what does TSSA suggest how do we handle it?
Soren, I'm going to defer to you.
Yeah, so as was presented today, the responsibility stays with the owner. However, we are there to support them, so they need to reach out to TSSA, and we'll have to find out exactly where that thing was fabricated. I saw in your question, I'm sure if it was yours, talking about items being fabricated overseas. So it all depends. We need to get access to the design specification of specific vessels or boilers, get in touch with the manufacturer, and therefore they can produce the design calculation, design specification drawings, so we can make them available to our engineers. Therefore, they have to go over and figure out if the design was adequate to be used in the province of Ontario, and that would be, if that will be positively acceptable, that will be providing the design registration for that specific item. Now, what comes in place is not only the design, but also the fabrication of the item, because once you have something that is fabricated, it's hard to reverse it and unfabricate that thing and do it from the beginning. So it depends on what was done for that specific item. Was that fabricated under an ASME program, American Society of Mechanical Engineers program, that is widely recognized throughout the world? Was a third-party inspector involved into that process? Do they have all the requirements as for any boiler or pressure vessel that's being fabricated currently? So it's a very tedious process. We cannot say it cannot be done, but is rather complicated, and you need our full support, the manufacturer support, the transparency of the owner, and all the stakeholders in this story.
Very good. Thank you so much, Surim, and thank you for that question. I know that there's potentially a couple more questions that are in the chat, in the Q&A. What I would like to recommend is if you can send those questions to pd@orims.org, and we will have TSSA provide a response, which will be shared via email to attendees with the presentation and the recording. I wanted to say thank you once more for everyone participating today. We really, truly appreciate it. I would like to thank Michelle, Surin, Lisa for their time and the valuable insight that you have shared with us today. We're also planning an in-person PD event tentatively for May 8th. More information will follow in respect of that event. Additionally, we will be launching our podcast series called Java Jam. As part of our introduction to the series, we will launch a few video episodes soon. Please look out for those videos. Lastly, the deadline to submit nominations for the Don Stewart Award, also known as the Risk Manager of the Year Award, is April 30th. Please do so by then if you wish to nominate an outstanding risk manager for consideration. And again, thank you so much for attending. We will share with you a link to the recorded version of the session, which includes TSSA's information, and it will be available on the ORIM's member resource channel. Thank you all so very much.